Peace, everybody. May 2023, we've worked with BAT to release a run of hand-done posters, limited in quantity, all signed by BAT across the center. These posters are going to be sent to our Patreon members on a first-come basis for the month of May 2023. No two posters are alike, and they measure 12 by 20. We've also released 2 new episodes onto our Patreon, one with BAT and another with Sluto and ANEKO. The BAT episode features BAT speaking on why he writes graffiti, fear of arrest, a non-conventional lifestyle, police society, robots within New York's subway system, technology, and more. The Sluto ANEKO episode is a conversation they had where Sluto interviews ANEKO. They speak on drugs, the apocalypse, squatting in Oakland, books, graffiti, self-esteem, ego, and more. Both full episodes are available on our Patreon. Members are shipped any monthly products we do, like upcoming issues of Living Proof magazine, silver mops, bags, zines, prints, and more. Members also gain access to our content library with video projects and interviews from Ichabod Why Me, Lex PMS, Savvy OTR, Cheek, Deceive Smart Crew, Les YKK, Mike Iraq, Dual RIS, Glare, and more. As always, immense thank you to anybody who supports the show in any way. Enjoy the episode. Peace.
Blessings. Angel and Z Radio is a show brought to you by the wonderful people at Art Primo. A graffiti shop like no other that has been proudly serving the community for decades from New York to Seattle and beyond. They have everything you need, and you probably need everything they have. Mops, paint, inks, sketchbooks, stickers, bags, and much, much more. Believe me, you will not want to miss this. artprimo.com. Enjoy the episode and goodbye.
This is a segment from the Sluto and ANEKO episode. The full episode is available on our Patreon.
Better bagels, Montreal or New York? These are the big important questions.
These are the important questions. This is what people really want to hear. Well, as a person from New York, I feel like I have to. I've never been to Montreal, but it doesn't matter because as a native New Yorker, I have to ride for my city. So New York.
What makes a good bagel?
I don't know. I mean, okay, what's a bagel like in Montreal? Have you ever had a bagel in Montreal?
Yeah,
what are they like?
Sort of. There's a bunch of big Canadian men with sticks, and they have like 20 bagels on a stick, and they take them out of the oven and they throw them into a bin. And they're really thin and kind of they're crispy on the outside and soft and hot on the inside.
That sounds pretty good. Crispy on the outside.
Yeah, which I think is what makes a good bagel.
What? I feel like that's like something that's not even like in my conception of a bagel, crispy doesn't really enter into it.
Really?
Well, yeah. There's a really good place on the street from here actually called Essa Bagel. Maybe it's gone now, but I used to go there.
Well, here's the one downside of a Montreal bagel. The downside of Montreal bagel is they only serve cream cheese in those little Philadelphia containers this big. There's no one to cut the bagel in half or put cream cheese on it for you.
I consider that unacceptable.
It
but
kind of is.
They do sound good, but maybe just not like bagels. I want to go. I've actually never been to Montreal. I really want to go. I feel like a good bagel is like, it's like kind of like fluffy, but also a little bit chewy. Not chewy, but like stretchy, like stretchy, but also soft, especially when it's really hot and they just came out. And then it should have like about a good ½ inch of cream cheese, at least.
Okay. Well, this is a graffiti podcast, so let's ask you, what is your favorite paint to paint with? Your favorite spray paint?
Rust-Oleum, I guess.
Rust-Oleum, what kind of caps do you use?
Stock tips.
Why?
What about you?
No, why?
Why?
Yeah.
Because that's what I'm used to at this point. I used to try to paint with more like fat caps and stuff, adapters and things like that. And at some point I just kind of gave up because I'm lazy and I kept losing my adapter because I lose everything. And now I just like the way that it looks better.
I feel the same way. I think if Rust-Oleum ever changes their valve, I'll quit graffiti.
Yeah, I don't think I could paint the way that I paint without that tip.
All right. So where are you from again?
New York.
New York City.
Washington Heights.
Capital of crime.
Yeah.
Friends with Talkie 183.
Besties. Same street, actually. I grew up on 183rd Street.
That's pretty crazy. I can see it in your style.
Definitely.
And then let's say how did you get into graffiti? Was it in New York?
No. I got into it when I lived in the Bay. Kind of by accident. I didn't really know anyone that did graffiti. My friend just kind of dragged me to the train yard one day. And we were just tagging on tankers. And then on the way back, there was like a freshly buffed wall that always got hit and buffed. And I wrote gotcha on there. And then I started writing gotcha like everywhere without really knowing anyone that did it or like how that really went. And then I was just like, I don't know. I had like tags all over Oakland for a little while as gotcha.
That's kind of the most fun way to get into graffiti.
Yeah, it was like one of those toys that like got like really into it and like nobody knew who they were, you know? It was awesome. It was the most fun I ever had.
What were you doing out in Oakland?
Various things. I was squatting there for like 5 years.
What do you mean squatting?
Like living in abandoned houses. Like we would go and find an abandoned house, move in, send ourselves mail so the cops couldn't kick us out, start fixing it up, talk to the neighbors, get the water turned on. You know.
And you can just do this? You can just live in abandoned houses?
Well, in the Bay, I think they've changed a lot of the kind of loopholes that made it easy. But there was one guy who lived there for so long that he ended up owning his house. He like got adverse possession and he filed for, you know, a claim that he had been living there for so long that he owned it, and they actually gave it to him. Only person I've ever heard of that's been able to do that.
And what about the Bay Area now? Have you been back recently?
Not for a year or two.
Is there anything you miss about it?
Burritos.
Burritos? New York burritos aren't good?
No.
No, they're not.
No.
It's over there. I don't know.
What's
your opinion of New York burritos?
New York Mexican food
as a California native.
Chef's kiss to New York Mexican food.
Uh-huh.
I think you can get good tacos out here.
Yeah, I think there's good Mexican food in New York, just not burritos, because burritos aren't really Mexican.
No, the burritos in Mexico suck.
Yeah, like maybe in northern Mexico, but it's really like a very like California kind of like maybe Southwest. Like it's very like Mexico, U.S. like.
Do you have a burrito recommendation for the Bay? If I'm in San Francisco or Oakland, do I just go wherever?
It's been a long time. I really like the taco truck that's by the West Oakland BART station.
Oh, that one is good.
That one's really good. The carnitas there.
Is West Oakland your stomping grounds where you were living when you were out there?
Yes. Yeah, it is. I lived, I guess, in various places. The last place I lived was in the Lower Bottoms on 8th Street.
I know the zone.
By the tubes, the old tubes yard.
Yeah, there's that.
Before they took all the tubes away.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
Yeah, I've been to the tubes before.
No, actually, sorry. I lived there after they took the tubes away, when it was the dirt mound.
Actually, I remember something I wanted to say to you is that I had a dream last night. And we were riding freight trains. We were in a boxcar and we got out. When it stopped, we were in kind of a tunnel and we painted graffiti in the tunnel. And then we woke up the next day and it turns out that tunnel was actually in the subway system. It was like the MTA, and the police had come and they had buffed our graffiti by cutting it out of the wall with chainsaws.
Oh, we did that to a mind detergent thing.
Well, whatever. This was in like a subway tunnel and they had cut the bricks out of the wall, and I was like, oh wow, that you can tell they're really mad when they cut your graffiti out of the wall. But then I was thinking about when people get mad at you for painting graffiti, you know, sometimes they'll like chase you. And sometimes they'll like pull a gun on you. And I think I remember one time you told me someone pulled a gun on you for painting.
Oh yeah.
What happened?
I was on a God, this is 100 years ago. I was on a roof with a friend of mine. We got up there. We figured out like a nifty way of getting up there by like walking up, like holding onto like a wire that went up a telephone pole and walking up the stucco wall, just like this, you know. And then we were walking around on the roof, kind of like figuring out what would be a good spot to paint. And a guy ran out screaming Hell's Angels and waving some kind of a pistol. And I don't know. He just was like, had us up there for a while. And was yelling at us. He made my friend go down and me stay up. And then after he'd been yelling at my friend for, 20 minutes or something, I kind of asked like, hey, can I, do you mind if I come down from here? And then he said, I don't give a shit what you do. So I went back down the way we'd come up, which was on the other side of the building. And I think I kind of ran and stashed my like bag in a bush somewhere and came around the other side to like where he was with my friend. And then he was just, yelling at me the same as he was yelling at my friend. And now he was just yelling at both of us. And then eventually a police car rolled up and said, hey, we got a call about some kids getting held up at gunpoint on a rooftop. Have you guys seen anything around here? And we all said, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And then they said, well, what about some vandals doing graffiti on one of these buildings over here? We got a call about that too. Have you guys seen anything like that? And the guy and we were all like, no, we don't know what you're talking about. And they were like, well, all right, well, let us know if you see anything. And they drove off, and the guy said, you kids have a very good night. And we walked away.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever had a gun, other than the time we were in New Jersey and the cop pulled a gun on us when we were...
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Were we trying to ride trains?
No, he thought we were. Do you remember? We were there to paint, and we'd stashed all our paint in a bush.
Oh, yeah, and he came back and just had his gun.
And we were snacking on, like, peanuts and beer or something.
Yeah, that guy was rude.
And we told him we were on a date. It was lucky we didn't have our paint with us. He really couldn't figure out what the hell we were doing down there. Did you ever think this is what your life would come to?
I prayed it wouldn't, and yet here I am. I mean, I think when I was like 16 years old, I was pretty sure that I would be a professional snowboarder and live in a mansion and have like a model girlfriend.
Damn.
Yeah.
Some people aim high. How far you've fallen.
It turns out that I'm not very good at snowboarding. So that dream went away pretty quickly.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I remember being in my 20s and thinking that, okay, well, at least by the time I'm in my 30s, I'm not going to be like traveling and being like a drifter and doing dumb shit. I won't be painting graffiti. I'll have like a real job and like a house or something.
And how did you propose to achieve these goals?
I mean, I went to college and I've had real jobs before. I just thought that I would settle down a little bit.
Talk about your real job.
No, I'm not going to.
Oh, okay.
I thought that I would have settled down by now. You know, I have like a hair up my ass and it won't go away. And yeah, I don't know. I wish that I could live a normal life.
You wish that you could want to live a normal life?
Yeah, I've had dreams. I've had dreams of white picket fences. I've pictured me with someone.
You've pictured you imagining a white picket fence and liking it,
and having like a wife and a kid and just standing there and like looking off into some imaginary sunset. And it seems really nice in my head, but then like every 6 months I have a mental breakdown, shave off all my hair and go live in a different place or whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I know this. I kind of did. This is maybe, I don't know which is worse, your version or mine, but I kind of did expect to be here. As like, you know, if you told teenage me, yeah, you're gonna like go and, you know, live in a bunch of squats for a while, and then you're gonna go ride trains around the country and like do a bunch of graffiti, and eventually you're gonna end up kind of like having an art studio in New York or whatever, and like working on a boat. I would have been like, sick, dude, you know. Like when I was a kid, I was kind of like, yeah, all right, I have to go like live in the Bay for a while. I gotta like, you know, I gotta travel a bunch. Like, I don't know. I guess I just have low bar, you know.
It pays to be simple. That's what my mom says.
Yeah. You know, maybe it's, I don't know if it makes you happy or not. If it makes me happy. I just don't really know what else I would do. I just don't think I'm really capable of having like a, you know, like a career.
Well, I think happiness is kind of a process, not a goal.
Yeah, I also don't really think it's a goal.
If you can lose yourself in the process of whatever your life is and not hate it too bad, you're kind of winning, right?
I don't know. I guess.
Ask me more questions.
Everyone makes it to the end somehow. Isn't that what you always say?
Yeah, everyone makes it to the end. That's all you have to do is make it to the end. That's the key of life.
Mm-hmm.
And once you get there, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
No problem.
So I should interview you.
I know. Well, I didn't want to be the one talking on this, but I'm such a fucking narcissist.
Right. Well, you know, the whole idea was for us to both talk about the things, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, nobody likes to be put on the spot. Or maybe you do.
I do.
You do. I don't. I can't.
Yeah.
It doesn't work well for me. The perfect sandwich.
I can't even really eat sandwiches anymore.
Oh.
I eat little sandwiches. When we were living in North Carolina, my roommate started making fun of me. He'd be like, "Oh, look at him eating his little sandwiches over there," because I just don't like cooking.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't even.
Your sandwiches,
I make a boring sandwich.
they make me sad.
Well, what about you? If you know so much about sandwiches.
I love sandwiches.
Alright.
I'm a big fan of sandwiches. But yeah, see, I can eat them. You have that thing.
Yeah. So what's a good sandwich?
Well, I was even writing about a really good eggplant parmesan, for example. Dude, delicious.
Where,
I had a
from, like, a
really
deli?
good one. No, not from a deli. But I had a really good one. There was this rail car diner in Worcester one time.
Worcester, Mass.
Worcester, Massachusetts. I was riding trains. And I think we had like almost no money with my ex. And we went into this rail car diner and we spent some of our almost no money on this like really good, like, it wasn't like a hero. It was like on like sliced, like thick sliced bread. And it was just like perfect proportions of like fried eggplant, tomato, and cheese, like all melted and kind of like crispy. Like the cheese was like a little burned on the edges. It was very good.
Food tastes better when you're hungry and broke, right?
So hungry. And it was like such a treat.
I think we had a good eggplant parm in New Hampshire.
That was a very
You
good
and I.
eggplant parm. Yeah, I remember
Secretly,
we were on a road
the
trip.
Northeast, the upper North, New England has a good eggplant parm, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I take it back. Sandwiches aren't the worst thing in the world.
Also think about the banh mi's in Vietnam. What do you think of Cleveland, and how did you make it out alive?
Cleveland's not bad.
Yeah, it's fine.
Why would they say, how'd you make it out alive? I did get Lyme disease there.
Oh, yeah. See, you barely made it
I
out
barely
alive.
made it out alive. I
Shit,
was
now that you
almost
mention it.
crippled there. Yeah, I couldn't walk anymore.
That was insane.
I couldn't move my neck.
Do you think you got it there? I think you got that Lyme disease in Minnesota.
But I brought it to Ohio.
Right. The symptoms only started in Ohio.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, Cleveland's a beautiful city. What do they say in Cleveland? At least we're not Detroit.
Oh my god.
That's the...
I forgot about that video.
Yeah. No, Ohio seems like it might be the secret next state. A lot of people talk shit on it.
Cincinnati is beautiful.
Yeah, I've heard Cincinnati's cool.
Mm-hmm. Love Cincinnati.
A lot of bands come from Columbus.
Really?
Indiana seems like it might be the actual
Indiana? That might be one of the only states I've never been to.
I know I've told you this before, but one time I was getting a ride from some old lady from Georgia to Michigan, and she was driving north, and we were going through Ohio by the Touchdown Jesus. You ever seen the Touchdown Jesus?
I've heard of Touchdown Jesus. It's Jesus like this.
Uh-huh. It's like
yeah,
50
it's like
feet tall on the side of the
gigantic.
highway.
Mm-hmm.
He got hit by lightning one time and burned, and there's videos of him burning.
Touchdown Jesus? I think
Yeah.
I've heard this.
But we were driving through that zone, and I remember the lady that I was driving with, and she was like, I can't wait to get back to Michigan so I won't be around all these fifis and fifos.
Oh, right.
And I was like,
what
what's a
fifi?
fifi and a fifo? And she's like, oh, fucking idiots from Indiana and fucking idiots from Ohio.
Yeah.
And I didn't know there was such strong regional hatred for these.
Where was she from again?
Michigan.
Michigan.
Nothing to be proud of. No, Michigan's cool.
Michigan's fine.
Yeah. She's from Traverse City, which is kind of yuppie.
No, I've never been.
But beautiful sand dunes up there along the lake.
I've pretty much only been to Detroit.
It's
In
hard to get up into
Michigan.
Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan's weird. I feel like I should go. That should be on my list this summer. Michigan, here I come.
Do you have another question for me?
Maybe. What's your apocalypse plan?
I'm gonna die
If
first.
shit hits the fan, what are you doing?
People say this stuff all the time, and I think I've heard other people voice this opinion, but like I know some prepper people,
Mhm.
disaster preppers, and like I'm just too soft. Like when the apocalypse comes, I'm just gonna lay down outside and wait for the tanks to run me over or whatever.
Nice.
Like I'm not a survivor. And like another thing is I don't really want to live in the world where it's just me and the preppers, you know? Me and like a bunch of dudes with AKs. Like I don't know. I don't like that kind of mentality, the lifeboat mentality. You know, I think we're both into anarchy stuff and
What's the lifeboat mentality?
so like if you look at like pre-societal, like pre-agricultural humans, their societies are kind of exhibit something called fierce egalitarianism, which is like a sharing. A lot of them are like a sharing culture. Like if you live with 50 people and there's X amount of food, taking too much for yourself is like really gauche, and you don't do that.
It's gauche.
It's looked down upon, you know. It's
Right.
like this sharing thing, but kind of what I've seen happen in like late capitalism, especially in America, is there's this whole kind of like consumer culture based around the prepper idea of like making your house like a lifeboat where like when the shit time comes, like you've got 50 years worth of beans and you got 20 AKs and you're going to gun everyone down when they try and come over the walls. And like I don't want to be in a world where it's like
Yeah, where that's like the prevailing
where
culture.
the nuclear family is the core unit.
Well, I wonder, like, maybe just, you know, there's got to be some percentage of people that'll just survive by accident. You know, it's sad because it's like once the apocalypse, like once there's been a cataclysm, it's not, yeah, it's not like we're going to be returned to like the beautiful, like, you know, it's true. Like throughout, for most of the history of humanity, humans lived in like small tribal groups and like hunted and foraged and did, you know, fished and did whatever. And kind of there was like functional anarchy essentially, you know? And I think that I kind of think that that is how human beings are supposed to live, honestly. And like that's like the most fulfilling way for human people to live, you know? But there's no going back to that, even if, you know, like the world ends and shit hits the fan and, you know, the apocalypse happens. It's, you're right. You know, after like a cataclysm like that, it is going to be like really just probably like a very dark world. Well, and then all the rich people will be like on the moon or whatever, you know?
Yeah. Or
like
in
they'll
Ohio.
be like in like the SpaceX shuttle on their way to, why would they be in Ohio?
A lot of them have like escape mansions in Ohio. You'd be surprised.
Why Ohio?
I don't know, or just rural places. They own like huge tracts of land out there and they're going to have like fiefdoms. I mean, I assume that if there's an apocalypse, we're going to return to a sort of
like a feudal
we're going to turn
state.
to yeah, it'll be like post-feudalism.
Do we even need an apocalypse to return to a feudal state, or are we on our way there now?
Well, I told you I've read, because I look at like being an artist under capitalism versus being an artist under communism. And I've read this book about what it was like to be an artist in the Soviet Union. And apparently it really sucked because you had to be a state artist. So think
Isn't there a name for it? Like, no, maybe not. I don't know.
Well,
Just, yeah, like.
No,
yeah.
So think if you were a state artist in the Soviet Union, basically you'd only be able to paint like community art because it all has to be approved by the government.
Right, it all has to like, yeah.
So like it made the most, you know, socialist realist art is some of the worst art in the history of time. You know, like I love the mosaics there, but most Soviet art was pure dog shit.
The mosaics are incredible. Some of the architecture too, the weird ass architecture.
So if you were an artist in the Soviet Union and you wanted to make non-state condoned art, you had no supplies to make it and no one would buy any of it.
You would like get in trouble for it.
You would get in trouble for it and you couldn't have exhibitions.
But versus then you had all those like cool like maybe then you could just only do it if you just really felt like making art. And
yeah, but you would starve to death.
Couldn't make a career out of it.
Well, then you have the U.S. where we have an art market that's just saturated with like awful bullshit that passes for art in the gallery world. But like you have to make art that's supported by the ultra rich here. So we have almost like a feudalist system here.
Well, it's weird because it's like the idea of making art in order to have a career and support yourself is really like, that's never really been a motivation for me, you know, or at least that's not how I started. You know what I mean? It seems like it kind of ruins it.
I know, it's been like slowly ruining it for me.
Yeah.
Why do you make art then? What's the point?
I just never have not made art.
Liar.
You're a liar. It's the truth. I can't help it. There was that thing, I think when I was a little kid, this is the story my mom tells, and I don't know if it's true. I can't remember the guy's name, but there was like, the way she tells it is we went to go see this guy who was, I forget his name, but he was one of those guys that does sound effects on the radio, or used to do, on the radio there used to be like a dude that would be like, could do like a car driving by.
Oh, like the guy from Police Academy.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know, but it's like a guy who could do all kinds of sound effects with just his voice for like radio stories. And we like, I was really, I don't remember this at all, but I guess we went to go see him live somewhere do his thing. And then we like went and met him after, like there's like a line of people and he was like signing autographs or something.
What a type of famous person to be.
I know, it was cool. And I think my mom says that we went and like he asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said an artist, which is
my condolences.
Doomed, yeah, cursed. And he said, well, you'll know you're an artist if you can't really do anything else.
Nelson Algren said the same thing about writing.
Yeah.
You know you're a writer if you can't do anything else.
Nelson Algren. That's right, I forgot about him.
Oh, do you want to give book recommendations to the kids?
Man with a Golden Arm if you want to like be really depressed.
Man with a Golden Arm by Nelson Algren.
Mm-hmm.
Was it 1940s Chicago, gamblers and junkies and whores?
Just really just the bleakest, one of the bleakest books I've ever read, I think.
I think it's really pretty. They made a movie with Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
It's not very good.
I'm sure. They're trying to make a movie out of You Can't Win.
Oh,
or that's been in the works for so long, I think probably maybe now it's not going to happen.
Who's You Can't Win by?
You Can't Win is by Jack Black, which is not his real name, and it's not the actor. It's from the turn of the century. It's
what
my
century?
Instagram handle is named after. Right, I guess the turn of the 20th century, like 19th to 20th century. So the turn of the last century, like late 1900s.
And what's it about?
Or late 1800s, sorry.
Is this a book you'd recommend?
It's a book, right. So wait, so what the question on here was specifically, what's a good book for someone who's new to reading? Like someone who doesn't read very much. And book I would say is a very good book for someone who's new to reading.
Yeah, You Can't Win. It's kind of about like a kid that goes riding trains and robbing people.
Right. Well, it starts out that he's riding trains, and then it ends up that he's doing burglaries, doing like house burglaries and stuff. And there's all kinds of like interesting characters that he meets, sort of like that form the part of this, form this underworld that he becomes a part of, where he's kind of like doing burglaries and various crimes and like fencing all the goods in Idaho through this lady, and kind of like, and then he ends up kind of going all over the country. He ends up in San Francisco. He becomes like an opium fiend.
And didn't he write the book kind of as a don't do this, don't live this kind of life?
Right. Well, it was yeah, that was kind of the stated purpose of the book, is it's called You Can't Win, as in to say like you can't win in a life of crime or whatever. But what's interesting, if you read at least the what's that like the AK Press Nabat Books, like that publisher, if you read that version of it, the afterword explains kind of like what, or he talks about it. There's something, I can't remember if it's him talking or if it's the afterword, but basically it describes how he kind of like never, or he talks about it in the book, I guess, where he never really, like, once he went straight, once he went on the straight and narrow and got out of prison and did all that stuff, he was like always kind of bored. He could never like be satisfied either, in like the normal law-abiding life. And then in the end, a watch of his that he said he would never give away was found in a pawn shop, and he kind of had been telling people that he was going to row out into the middle of the bay and just fall off the side of the boat.
That sounds like a nice way to go.
Yeah. When he disappeared, no one had heard from him, and then they found that watch in that pawn shop.
So for someone that's new to reading, you would recommend You Can't Win by Jack
Yes,
Black.
And it's not as bleak. I know I just described it sounding really bleak, but it's not actually that bleak. It's very like colorful and kind of like fun, I think.
Any other books?
Yeah, I have a list. Do you have any?
I thought of basic ones that people could read. One would be Native Son by Richard Wright.
Oh, I haven't read that one.
It's like it's 100 years old probably, and it's just about a kind of a bunch of unlikable characters. This African American guy growing up in Chicago who gets done dirty by a bunch of like well-meaning crackers. And it's, I don't know, it's 100 years old, but it's still like, it still rings very true.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
It's very hard to read because of just like how kind of awful everyone
right,
is.
like you're just cringing the whole time.
And you're just like it's very well plotted. Characters get into situations where you're just like, oh, this is just ugly from every angle.
Oh, books like that stress me out.
And then like a lighter read, I'd say, is Trout Fishing in America.
Oh, Trout Fishing in America.
That's like
about that.
120 pages.
Richard Brodigan.
Pretty. So those would be my recommendations. For
various books by Richard Brodigan. I feel like
people that don't know how to read good. And I remember when I was younger, I was with some friends of mine, and we were all kind of just like drunk and dumb or whatever. And my friend was dating this girl that we all hated, and he was like, "Oh, she thinks she's so smart. She's always reading book." And I thought that was really.
I was just listening to some podcast where some lady talked about how like she was like very unpopular because she had all A's, and then she like started intentionally like misspelling things and like doing like a bad job on her homework, and she became popular.
That's how it works. Yeah.
Well, she also like started focusing more on like her outfits and her hair and stuff, I guess. But it's hold on, I have some other of course this was in like middle and high school. I have some other recommendations. One was Yellow Kid Weil, Weil. That one's about, it's like You Can't Win, but for like cons around the same period of time.
So 100-year-old book on con artists.
100-year-old book on con. It's like a con artist from 100 years ago's memoir.
What's the moral of the story?
I never conned anyone that didn't think that they were getting over on me. Basically, that was his whole thing. It's like he insisted that all the victims of his cons thought that they were conning, thought that they had found a way to get something for nothing.
You can't get something,
and that they were getting over, right? And that you can't get something for nothing.
It's like you just can't win.
Shut the fuck up.
You know how they say to get to Carnegie Hall, the best way? Practice.
What about Kiss of the Spider Woman?
Oh, that's a beautiful book, but it's not really like a beginner book.
You don't think so? It's easy to read.
Yeah, I suppose so. It's a piece of metafiction where two men are in a jail cell fucking, describing a movie.
Yeah, I feel like it's a good. Well, they don't fuck till the end.
they're going.
I feel like it's a good introduction to metafiction.
A good introduction to metafiction. Yeah, this is.
I had a question.
Yeah.
And if you want, they'll be able to hear this.
Okay.
Do you think any books should be banned? And if so, who has the power to decide? Like, who gets to decide that this book should be banned?
Oh, banning books.
Banning books.
I don't know.
There's
like,
a lot of books that are banned.
Well, like what are
books?
Books that are banned? I feel like Harry Potter might be banned.
I don't know if you Google books that are banned, mad shit comes up.
Yeah.
Well, because like I think Mein Kampf isn't banned because it's like a historical, book
document.
That people should see this thing, and it's like fucked up.
I knew
and
we were
stupid.
going towards Mein Kampf. I knew Mein Kampf was going to be the.
Well, but I don't know what books are even banned at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. Either.
Also, I think banning books, they're maybe missing the entire boat.
Also, like banned by whom and where.
Well, also, who even reads books? You know, like I think banning a book at this point is missing the boat entirely.
It gives it like more power.
Maybe ban.
In a sense.
Well, what happened when they banned Alex Jones from YouTube? Anything? I don't know. We're still living in hell world. We're still.
You're saying that they banned Alex Jones from YouTube and life still sucks?
Well, I mean, I don't think that his acolytes got any. You know, they still found a way to find an Alex Jones type thing. You know, it's what is it? Quien hace la ley hace la trampa. If you put a rock in a stream, water goes around it two ways. So
there's a big difference between banning somebody from YouTube and banning a book. People don't. Reading is like work. Watching videos is much more passive.
Well, I think watching videos is easier to indoctrinate people.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's easier to kind of like watch videos. You know, it's more accessible.
I mean, an entire like the idea of censorship is an entire debate that is, you know, should things be censored? I have no idea.
I have no idea. I feel like there probably is like some good argument for why they should, but I don't.
Well, but who's
really
doing
know
the censoring? I feel like my family, everyone's a lifelong member of the ACLU, and I kind of back that vibe of like, I don't agree with what you have to say, but I agree with your right to say it. Except then you have hate speech, and so you got to
right. Well, I'm trying to think of an example that's something that you could argue should be banned.
Probably any book that I'm gonna write should be banned.
You should be banned.
Yeah, definitely. We can have star fades in between. On like old TV shows we'll have with like a sound like
Okay.
How about how many tabs have you eaten at once?
Oh, how many tabs have you eaten at once? I forgot about that question.
I have sort of a good story about that, but I want to hear you first.
I like not very many, like 1 or 2.
That's it?
Yeah, I think 1.5 tops. I do not like not being in control. I really, really don't like it. I'm very afraid of that.
I don't even take acid anymore. Tripping is for teenagers. But as a young person, I had even more psychic problems than I do now, and mental dilemmas. And at some point, the cops came to my house because someone had to get taken away in an ambulance. And the cops showed up at my house, and they saw my apartment that was full of spray paint and a bunch of drawings, and they took a bunch of it illegally. They illegally confiscated some drawings. They took a bunch of pictures, which is all illegal evidence. But because of that, I came under the scrutiny of the graffiti task force in that town I was living in. It was a long time ago.
Yes.
And so from that point on, I kept getting calls from the police all the time accusing me of random crimes. Like 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning, my phone would ring, and it'd be this officer, and sometimes he'd speak to me in Spanish because he knew I spoke Spanish and shit. And he would just say so someone wrote "kill the police" on a wall right by your house. We know it was you. So do you want to come turn yourself in now? And I would be like, I have no fucking idea what you're talking about. But he kind of harassed me for about 3 months, and I was like losing my mind because he would just call me at random times. And this is like in early cell phone days, and for some reason, I felt the need to pick up all the calls. And then one day he called me at my job. He called my work phone, and I answered, and he was just speaking in Spanish. And I was like, what the fuck is this? And I agreed to go meet with him. And he kind of interrogated me, and he had a whole folder full of tags that were all they knew everything.
Right.
And I just denied it all really forcefully. I even threw some fucking red herrings out there. I was just like, I don't even know anything about graffiti. I think maybe I've met that guy at a party or something, and I've got bigger problems. I'm addicted to drugs.
Right.
I told him.
And then you said you used a word.
Oh yeah, I used fake drug slang.
Which is, I have something to say about that. I found out that word was used.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I told the cop that I was addicted to heroin, but we were speaking Spanish, so I said caballo.
Caballo, which means horse.
Caballo.
Which you were
and
just
he was just
making
really
up.
confused.
He was like, that's not a thing.
He's like, what are you talking
but
about?
Then
why would you tell that to a cop? I was just so nervous and trying not to get arrested for graffiti.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he interrogated me, and I was like, oh my fucking God, this is... and so I ran home after work, and I had a bunch of drugs in my apartment. I had a sheet of acid. And I was just like, I gotta throw all this shit down the toilet. And I was I had a bunch of shit that I was throwing down the toilet, and I took the sheet of acid and I just took a big bite out of it.
Oh my God.
And I threw it down the toilet.
Right, I forgot about that. I was like, how does acid enter into this story?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Wait, did you get arrested?
They never ended up raiding my house.
Oh my God.
It ended up really leading... I don't think I ever got arrested or charged with anything at that juncture. So
Well, tell the story. Isn't it tell the story what happened to that cop, or at least the rumor. We don't know if it's...
Oh, I don't.
No.
Well, I think he
ended up
sued
leaving the
sued the
force,
police
and he took all
department
his
for discrimination
files.
because he was like, I can't believe you bastards stuck me on this silly graffiti task force.
Right, because he was like a spook.
He was like a trained.
Yeah,
yeah. He was. Like
That's a really good story. The guy was a CIA operative or something.
He was
crazy.
Yeah. He's trained in another country and got brought to the U.S.
Basically,
he was trained in all this like high end shit, and they stuck him on the graffiti task force, and he was like, "Fuck you."
Yeah.
And then he quit the task force and he took all his files with him.
And
I mean, that's what I heard.
That's the rumor, at least, which is, it's such a good rumor that it's worth repeating, I'd say.
Yeah. And so they, he knew who everyone. It's not hard in a small town to figure out who everyone is.
No, especially if you're like a spy. Yeah.
I mean, it's all like childhood rumor mill shit. I'm sure that's not even the real story. But I know that he did sue for discrimination and then moved to a different department or whatever.
Dude, I meant to tell you about that thing where Caballo, I saw like in some like 80s like thing from Spain. I was like watching this like mockumentary kind of about like early graffiti like tagging culture in Spain, when it was like kind of like punk and like not, it's like something from like, some like hip hop thing appeared on the Spanish TV like one time, and it like set off all these people like doing tags and doing, people had no idea what was going on, but it was there was also like a way that a lot of people would get spray paint is that there was this anti-drug campaign. There was like an opioid, like a heroin epidemic there in the 80s. And like the way that kids would get paint is that there was like these people going around being like, hey kids, like come to this anti-drug workshop we're doing to like teach you to not do drugs. And one of the things they would do is they would give out spray paint and tell the kids to spray paint this anti-drug like slogan everywhere and draw like a syringe crossed out.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's like how like a lot of the early like little tagger kids would like get their cans of paint. And that's somewhere in the course of watching that, somebody called heroin caballo, and I was like,
it's real.
Yeah, like, what did it call you?
I guess I'm kind of clairvoyant then.
Yeah, but it was really cool. The slogan was "Get hooked on life, engánchate a la vida."
I'd rather not.
Yeah, I know.
I'm already pretty hooked. I keep eating and drinking and shitting and sleeping.
I'm super addicted to
heavy
air and food.
I'm heavy
water.
Addicted to being alive.
I'm a fiend.
For now, anyways.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
How TF, that means the fuck. How the fuck do I end up living your lifestyle? And this person says they're at an art world job that they hate. Well, there's the first
and that they're an artist.
And they're an artist.
Yeah.
Like, okay, 2 strikes against them already.
Well, it's not strikes against them. It's just, first of all, what is our lifestyle? Or what is my lifestyle?
Yeah,
what's yours? But I mean, I think that it's like traveling and having kind of like weird,
you kind of have to give up.
Right. Like you kind of have to like start out not knowing any better and making a lot of poorly conceived decisions when you're young.
I didn't live this lifestyle really till I was like 30. Like in my 20s, I tried, and then I got
You
afraid.
had a job.
Well, I had a real job.
You were trapped by
your
job.
And then I lost the job because of the recession. And that year that I didn't have a job is like the only year I had fun in my 20s. So I was like, hey, there's no jobs. Like,
yeah,
I'm going to go like ride trains and paint a bunch of graffiti. And then as soon as I could get a real job again, I went back and got one, and then I realized that it was awful.
It was a living death.
Yeah, it's a living death,
Well, that's right. See, I kind of like did things like the really dumb way. Like I dropped out of college, and I just started like doing this whole squatting thing, and I sought out people that knew how to ride trains kind of through that. I kind of made it my priority to figure out how to like move in that world. Like I was like, because I wasn't paying rent, like I could work at a coffee shop and like actually save money. You know?
I think it's hard if
or
you
whatever.
live in
but
New
I
York.
remember, dude, if you live in New York, you're fucked. And if you're trying to have a career, you're fucked. Like if you are planning for the future at all,
no, it's not.
You don't end up like doing that. You know what I mean? Like
Fortune favors the bold, my friend.
Or the dumb.
The dumb. It doesn't favor people that have self-preservation.
Yeah, people who are like responsible. Like you kind of have to be like an idiot.
No, I mean, I'm pretty responsible, but I also...
I mean, I'm like fairly responsible.
I feel like we both
But I didn't get here by being...
Yeah.
I mean, I got here by being reliable enough to have like a gig job, like doing all the like trimming, working on weed farms and stuff. you know.
I think
Like those people would like hire me. People like, you know, by being reliable enough to be someone that people were willing to hire and recommend.
Yeah, don't be a total piece of shit. Be vaguely reliable. If you can find gig type work where you can make $10,000 in a month,
even if
like,
you're working 15 hours a day,
if you
20
hours
18 hours
a
a
day,
day, 7 days a week. When we did Christmas trees, we were working
30
18
days,
hours a day, 7 days a week, living outside, you know.
Yeah, you have to kind of be willing to suffer,
like living
a
in a
lot.
van for a month.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, I got all my work out of the way, you know, for the next like couple months, you know. Now I can like, if I, you know, have like do like gig jobs and shit, you know, and survive off of like, you know, supplementary stuff.
Making art for money is not how to do it.
No, definitely
You know,
not.
like, I think people think that we make a bunch of money on art, but so far that hasn't been the case. The art is what we do on the side, and like the working shitty jobs and trying to like save money.
Well, and like a lot of the traveling was like when you could still make money off working on weed farms. It's like, oh, well, let's go ride trains to the West Coast to work on a weed farm. That way we don't, like, we save on travel expenses. We manage to have fun.
I'm not paying rent anywhere.
Right, you're not paying rent. You either sublet your room or just don't
live.
Have a lease. Yeah, dude, when you and I met, I had just, like, we were getting evicted from the last squat that I lived at. The letter came in the mail, and I didn't even decide to fight it. I just left and said, well, now I live nowhere for the next year at least, and I'm only just going to travel around. You know, it was also coincidentally, like, the first time I got offered a trim, like, weed trimming as a job.
Yeah, we got in right at the end of weed.
Yeah, we really did. But it was cool because you could just, you know, I just did that all of that for that whole season. And then it was like, yeah, no rent, you know, all I had was a backpack. It was awesome.
I know.
I want to like throw away all my stuff. I have too much shit.
I want to do that too. Dude. I need to find a way to throw away all this mosaic shit.
Yeah.
I
remember when you burned that big painting when you first moved back to New York?
Someone just brought that up the other day. Yeah. I got offered, or someone was going to pay me $500 for this large painting, and I painted the whole thing and got it done.
And you hated it.
I hated it so much.
It was like a reptilian Garden of Earthly Delights.
Yeah, it's Hieronymus Bosch done with reptilian characters,
with,
like fucking each other. Yeah, it's like little reptiles like driving cars over each other and like fucking each other by a fountain. It looked like a shitty version of Bosch. I think it was like a 3 foot by 4 foot canvas.
It was like, and you lit it on fire in the backyard
because it was hideous. It was a terrible. It felt so good to burn that. But then I was talking about this the other day, and I felt hell embarrassed because then a couple months later I was riding freight trains, and I ended up in northern Montana in my favorite town that I'm not going to name because it's going to get ruined if I fucking name it. Yeah.
Certain things, I ended up in this
town. I was with these oogles, and they were begging for money.
What's an oogle?
Oh yeah, people don't. Oogle's like a Flintstone, a kid with a.
No, a Flintstone kids is the previous generation. I guess it's like your age group, honestly.
These are just like one of them's dead now. R.I.P.
Oogle is like a train rider. It's basically a toy, but for riding trains.
Yeah.
It's used in the same way. It's like someone who like
it's a pejorative.
It's pejorative, but you can use it affectionately.
Yeah.
You know, it's
well,
like.
Anyways, I was in Minneapolis.
Anyway, go ahead.
And I was trying to catch a freight out of Minneapolis, and then I looked down this hillside, and I saw this girl and this guy drinking natty daddies, as one is apt to do.
Natural fathers.
Yeah. And I decided to go down and hang out with them. We got on separate freight cars when the train came, and the next day ended up in Montana. And I got off, and I saw them get off, and we took the long walk into town, and I was like, I'll kick it with these kids for a while. And when you're hanging out with shitty oogle kids, the local townspeople like can spot you from a mile away in a small town, and some of them really like out of town people.
Some of them, oh yeah, God, that town is awesome.
Yeah, and so they, you know, someone invited us to their house, yeah, and I hung out in this backyard for a couple days with like these native fools, and like it was really fun. But at some point this painting came up. I had just burned that painting, and I was like, oh yeah, I was gonna get paid $500 for this canvas, and then I just burned it. And then later I thought about how fucking gauche that was. I was staying in the fucking backyard of some people that like barely had money for food.
Right, like $500 is like 2 months
it's
rent
like a
on that
shitload
house.
of money to them. To me, I'm like, I
Yeah.
live in New York. $500 like doesn't get you. It's like 2 days of being alive here.
Yeah,
you know,
it sucks.
but I felt really bad then. I was like, damn, I must sound like such a fucking asshole because I am. You know.
Well,
so
it's just different. Like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like baselines, kind of like different, like standard expectations of like where you are. You know.
Yeah.
Money is not worth as much in New York.
Those people in Montana are sick. Caleb, if you're listening, he texted me like a year later with a picture of one of my trains going through that town. And I was like, damn, sick. He's still out there.
Sick.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That town, I had a really awesome experience in that town arguing with the motel lady. Do you remember that?
No.
It was in the same town. We were trying to get a motel room. There was 5
and she
of us.
thought we were going to like burn the place down.
She thought we were going to like get wasted because we looked like that. You know, we were all like dirty and shit. She could tell we'd gotten off the train. But it's funny because like we were all kind of like, it was like a group of people that maybe would have like absolutely ruined the motel room 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But now we're all like in our 30s, you know, and I was kind of trying to explain that to her. She's like, well, what do you do when you're not riding the rails, just bum around? And I was like, no, I have a job, I swear to God.
Yeah.
I work for my money.
I love small town fools.
You
They're
know, but
fucking-
then at the end she was
sick.
awesome. She told me her grandma rode a train
Yeah.
to Seattle
No,
to
when
get
you're
married, and then she was kind of like on our team.
when
you
you're in
know?
that town, I went to the drugstore one morning and this girl was like, "Oh, you guys off a train?" She's like, "Yeah, I did that for 2 years. I just got on one of these trains here, and I was just
Oh yeah, that
homeless
lady
for
was
2
awesome.
years." I remember, and
then she just went back to that town.
yeah, she's like, "Yeah, I rode trains for 2 years," and she's like, "I remember one day being homeless under a bridge in Tennessee and like heating up water in a tarp and taking a shower, and she's like, it was the most beautiful time." And now I'm back here in this town working at the
Yeah, and she's
drugstore.
got like kids and shit there.
Yeah, I was like, that's
She was
so
like, she
sick.
seemed pretty like happy.
She was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.